Good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Economic Club of Indiana. Thank you all for joining us today. We are the place to be challenged by leading speakers and advance great ideas collectively, and I'm really glad you're all being part of it. My name is Kathy Langham, and I am the President and CEO of Langham Logistics. I'm also very honored to serve as President of the Economic Club for the current season. Before introducing today's guest, I'd like to also take a moment to thank our outstanding group of Platinum sponsors. They were highlighted to the left of the stage and on the sides of the virtual conference room floor. Thank you, sponsors. By the way, we welcome your feedback on this new virtual format also. Last season, many of our events were the top trending happenings on Twitter. Let's keep it going by expanding today's conversation through social media. So if you haven't already, get out your phones now and post, tweet, or like us so that all your friends will know that you are involved in the Economic Club. The Economic Club Twitter handle is @EconomicClubIN. We're also tweeting using the hashtag EconLunch. Join us after the presentation today for the conversation after the conversation. This is a discussion led by Leadership Indianapolis, Rebekah Hutton, featuring local leaders within our community. And now, I am very, very pleased to introduce this month's speaker, Chief Executive Officer of Genesys, Tony Bates. As the CEO of Genesys, Tony leads the company's strategy, leadership, and operations in more than 100 countries and oversees a global team of more than 5,000 employees. Tony has significant experience steering business-to-business and business-to-consumer companies through major market transitions and rapid scaling. A passionate technologist at heart, Tony began his career in network operations and internet infrastructure, teaching himself to code during his daily train commute to work in London. He swiftly gained the business acumen to advance into trusted executive roles at some of the world's most respected global companies. Career highlights include leading Cisco's service provider business, growing its enterprise and commercial division to more than $20 billion, then serving as CEO of Skype, where he was responsible for expanding the business to over 170 million connected users. Especially valuable for all of us in 2020. Once Skype was acquired by Microsoft, Tony became president, where he was responsible for unified communications and then serving as executive vice president of business development and developers. In addition to his role at Genesys, Tony serves on the board of directors of both VMware and eBay. Audience, we want you to be part of the conversation. As we hear remarks from today's guest, we will open the chat feature for questions to be directed to Tony. Please join me in welcoming Tony Bates.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everyone at this virtual lunch. I wish we could be together in person, and maybe just before we jump into a small presentation, then Q&A, just want to wish everyone that they're safe and well in this, continued challenging time. I know it's been quite a challenge for all of us, and I've been very focused on employee safety and really making sure that everyone has been well through this pandemic as best we can. I thought I would start just with a small presentation. I know many of you are actually our customers, and I thank you for that. So you'll have some notion of Genesys, but more importantly, paint a little bit of the vision and where we're going as a company, and just ground you in kind of what we really see for the industry and broader. And then obviously, Kathy will turn that into Q&A, and I hope you enjoy the session and get something about Genesys, but more importantly, a little bit about where we think the industry is going in the space that we play. So let me just turn my attention to the presentation. So let me start by just sort of outlining, for those who don't know, the journey that we're on. And I'll come back to this idea of experience as a service throughout the presentation. But just to kind of paint a little picture of Genesys, Genesys is actually a 30-year-old company. It was founded actually in San Francisco and has been through a sort of an interesting ride. It actually was a company that went public pre the boom bust and then was bought by Alcatel and then spun out and owned by private equity. And one of the reasons that there's such a strong affinity for Genesys with Indiana, and in particular Indianapolis, is of course the merger between Interactive Intelligence and Genesys itself. Now, Genesys really led in this first wave of really thinking about stuff that we all take for granted today, but is actually how do you connect individual consumers with agents, often in a call center, and do that in a very effective and efficient way. And it started off in a very traditional context using telephony, but over time that has broadened into what we call today omni-channel contact center, right? Which is, I want to interact with a business and I want to do it in the way that I want, using either a social channel, SMS, voice, email, all of the plethora of interactions. And as Genesys went on that journey, it really led in some of the groundbreaking innovations that in some ways we take for granted today. Things like IVR, interactive voice response, where you would actually interact with a piece of software that would then route you to the right agent or to the right service or to the right salesperson. The journey that's really taken Genesys to where it is today is really the power of the two companies that came together. For those of you who know the Indianapolis community well, Interactive Intelligence, really an innovator in the same space as Genesys, much more focused on sort of the mid-market and commercial market, with Genesys focused on the high end. And so that integration of bringing those two companies together really put us in an unparalleled position, not just with our customer reach and understanding, but really in a way to serve the market in multiple avenues. The other incredible thing about the merger was really the technology and the talent that we picked up in the Indianapolis area. And it's worth pausing for one moment on this because it's really the lifeblood of the strategy that I'm about to talk about. What we're really on is a journey to completely transform the way people think about customer experience. And at the center of that is innovation that started with Interactive Intelligence. It's really critical to what we do. It was called Pure Cloud, and now that product is named Genesys Cloud within inside the walls of Genesys. So we have been on an incredible journey. It's taken a lot of time, but we really feel that we're in a good position. So I thought I'd just share with you a little bit of an overview. Kathy touched on some of the numbers in the opening, but just to give you a little bit of sense of the company. So as Kathy mentioned, we're 5,500 talented people strong around the world. Our largest site is in fact in Indianapolis, both from the level of functions that we support. It's a true multidiscipline design center, a center of excellence across everything that we do, but it's also our largest employee base out of all the sites that we have around the world. Now, the journey we're on is, some of you who are familiar with technology will know, is that we have delivered some of the best technology to really enable our customers deliver some of the greatest experiences to their customers. And the way that that's been traditionally done, as many of you know, have been on premise. We deliver incredible software, we do updates, we maintain that, and we work with the customer, but most of the capabilities will be run by the customer themselves. But as many of you know, there's been this tremendous movement towards cloud, not only from a business model when we think about software as a service and recurring revenue, but more importantly, so that customers can take advantage of the pace of innovation, so that when you innovate on a piece of technology, that technology accretes to every customer, not just a single customer who may take a software release. More importantly, it's really enabled us to take advantage of artificial intelligence and machine learning, because the more customers we put on our cloud services, the more that we can start to build models and more understanding about what our customers are doing and how they're interacting with the software and the tools and the service that we deliver. And from that, we can start to do much more than just provide an engagement channel. We can actually start to do things like predictive outcomes. How do we make things more efficient, more effective for a business? But more importantly, how do we start to make things more personalized? And that, I think, is the bigger takeaway if you think about the vision that we're on to do that. Now, we've been very lucky as a company. We're in this transformation zone from prem to cloud. And the way we think about it is how much of our business is now recurring revenue. You can see we've just passed what I call the transformation zone on that journey, and we're greater than 85%. We have some of the richest and strongest customers in the world, 7,000 plus customers, from the top Fortune 100 customers all the way through. We have hundreds of customers just in the Indiana area alone. But to put it in perspective, the way I like to think about it, it isn't just the customers, because at the end of the day, we're providing software tools, analytics, and services for our customers to enable customer service, sales experiences with the downstream customers. And whilst it's hard to estimate, we would say that we probably help enable and touch billions of downstream customers. Now, we're very fortunate that we have some of the largest customers in the world to help with that. But remember, what we're really trying to enable is those important moments, those moments of truth, the real-time moment when perhaps you have a problem with your service, or you've had a bad interaction on a customer service or e-commerce transaction, and you really want that empathetic ear, that empathetic person at the end of that call or that digital channel, or even a bot, and how it emulates empathy moving forward. So we take our role in this very seriously. Now, to do this and to grow in the way that we've grown, we've had to make sure that we also scale. And we've been very fortunate to have some of the best technology partners in our ecosystem, over 1,500 partners. If I kind of break it down around the world, we're very partner reliant outside of the US. We're about 40% of our business in the US flows through partners, but we'll continue to expand that. The last and probably the most important piece is that when you step back and you think about what I said earlier around interactions, these are these moments of truth. Our software and services are processing somewhere in the order of 70 billion interactions a year. And every single one of those interactions, if we do our job correctly, should make the end customer feel better about that interaction after they had it than when they went in. And that really speaks to this broader notion of a vision. So the vision we have for the company, it's a big one, it's a bold one, is really to deliver hyper-personalized experiences. And to do that, we know that we need to engage across all channels, not just the customer service channel. Every time a customer touches a business, we want to help create tools that enable that business to make their end customer feel special. Now, part of that is technology. It's moving to cloud. It's becoming more digital. It's taking advantage of artificial intelligence capabilities that we have, but it's also making sure that we correlate all the aspects of the data from a customer, not just the interaction data in the moment, the customer data, employee data in terms of how well an agent, for example, interacted with that customer, what their preferences were. Think of it as creating a holistic 360 profile around that. And so one of the important aspects that we work very hard on at Genesys is also to really expand our ecosystem, not just of channel and distribution partners, but really to play with the most important strategic technology partners out there. So in the last year, for example, we signed a strategic partnership with Microsoft, with Adobe, with Zoom, with Amazon AWS, with Google, because it really takes that full view if we're going to drive personalized experiences that emulate more of an empathetic experience, more of a pleasurable experience for end customers. Now, we believe if we do that, that ultimately translates into a great experience for an end customer, which drives loyalty and trust. And we know when you do that, you drive lifetime value for the business. So in a way, what's happened to our industry, the CX, the customer experience industry, it's really transitioning from an efficiency and effectiveness play to one that's really about revenue generating opportunities for our customers. Now, it goes beyond just accelerating to cloud. It is in every single aspect of what we do. And so as the industry has evolved, it's meaning that we also have to rethink those experiences. We need to deliver digital first experiences that are more predictive, powered by AI. We need to bring workforce engagement solutions together with the consumer experiences we deliver, because really it's about the whole experience that you deliver. And really we need to orchestrate those in a way that becomes more and more personalized. Think about Genesys as the master orchestrator of both data and engagement experiences, and then giving those tools and analytics to our customers to best serve their customers. Now, I want to come back to Indiana. I've had the pleasure of spending some time in Indianapolis. I wish I could be there with all you today. I remember when I first joined the company about 20 months ago, and the first port of call across any of the sites was in fact Indianapolis. And I remember not only the incredible welcome I got from the team and the level of sort of focus on our customers and innovation, but I felt there was a community. I was instantly embraced by the community. There's a sense of pride with the customers that we have. And here's just a few of some of the leading customers around the world. And what I wanted to just share with you is that as much as it's important that we drive these incredible experiences and we help make it more efficient and more effective for our customers, I think there's a bigger purpose that we've really been focused on, which is, can we also deliver these experiences in terms of furthering education, in terms of helping with the pandemic? One of the things that we found when the pandemic hit was that it was really important that we helped our customers first with business continuity. But then we realized there was a second order issue, which is that actually customers were calling into businesses and they weren't just asking about where their insurance could be or making a payment on their mortgage. They needed someone to talk to. They needed someone to share and help them get through this at a much higher level. And I just want to touch on a couple of customers that I feel very proud about. Obviously, many of you in the audience would know about Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. I think that when we think about creating these hyper-personalized experiences, we can drive that through every aspect, not just in terms of a commerce transaction or a purchase or a sign up for a new mortgage. We can really do that differentiated for an education institution like Rose-Hulman, or the work that we've done with Gleaner's Food Bank to really help disseminate that and communicate the information. So I'm super proud of the partnerships that we have with customers and partners in Indiana. I'm super proud of the level of innovation and technology that I've seen. And I wish, again, I could be there with you to kind of give you that welcome in person. But I hope that we can return to that. At the times I've been with the team, I've had the pleasure of meeting the governor, the mayor, and the embracement not only of Genesys, but I think of technology to the community has been as good as I've seen in any part of the world, if not better. And last, I just want to leave you with the commitment that we're making to Indianapolis. I mentioned it's our largest location in the world. There's no plans to change that. It's a center of excellence in terms of the history and understanding of what we do, but it's also the center of excellence for innovation. And we're also very, very committed not only to our employees in the community, but really to planting the flag. Some of you, I hope, would have seen that last year, it was a difficult year, obviously, but we really stepped up and looked at the local community and made a big commitment, in this case, to our favorite, certainly, IndyCar driver, James Hinchcliffe, and sponsored into the Indy set of races. It was unfortunate that we couldn't be all together to really see that, but to see the Genesys logo, the Genesys signage, our commitment to the community for the Indy 500 was, for me personally, one of the most touching moments that I've had so far in my tenure as an executive. I don't want to give everything away, but I will tell you that we are going to step up and continue our commitment towards James and the Indy series, and so stay tuned for that. And with that, I think I'll just hand back and we can open up for Q&A, Kathy, and you can take it in any direction that you would like. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Tony. Wow, I don't know where to begin. That's really exciting news about James Hinchcliffe. He is a favorite driver for many of us, and that is the IndyCar is such an important economic driver for Indianapolis. So thank you for that. The Andretti racing team always does really well, so that is very exciting. And it's just curious, what attracted you to that opportunity?
Yeah, that's a wonderful story that some of you may have read about. And I think it does speak to a little bit of the indie culture. When I joined the company, Genesys, one thing I would describe, it's been around a long time. But I found actually a lot of people would say, well, what does Genesys do? And you're going to go through what we do as a technology company. But we hadn't really done a lot of external branding, let's say. And I had been thinking about how do we kind of get a 2-for-1? Like, one is come out a little bit as a brand, but more importantly, how do we use that as a way to really get true employee engagement? Because ultimately, our employees are our ambassadors, right? For not only the brand, but for what we do as a company. And one of the sales leaders, who is based in Indianapolis, had come to me with this idea about, could we get more involved in sponsorship in the area? And he knew that I personally like car racing, and he floated this idea: if I could find the right ambassador, would we entertain this and would we spend into it? And he took it upon himself personally to DM James Hinchcliffe directly. Now, I gave him a little bit of cover and said, yes, if you can pull this off, we could look at it. But he took the initiative, and James responded, and the rest is kind of history. We met the Andretti team. Their values are aligned. I think James is just an incredible human being, both in terms of performance and driving, but what he stands for in the local community. And so, it kind of came together, but it's really, again, a great story about the initiative taken by an individual who has pride in Indianapolis and really wanted to put it on the map. And, hopefully we can continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. And look forward to seeing you in May when the race.
I hope so. I really do.
Yeah. And thanks for the nice things you said about your first trip to Indianapolis. We do believe we're a welcoming community, and we are absolutely delighted that you took the helm of Genesys a couple of years ago, and that you are continuing to strongly value the Indianapolis group. And certainly all our businesses need all the help we can get with AI and customer engagement. So that's a big deal. Just curious, got to hit on the pandemic here. So how has the pandemic affected the culture of your business and this whole concept? I know you talked about business continuity with your clients and they need someone to talk to, but internally your culture, how has it been impacted?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I know it's top of mind for everyone. Let me describe it as sort of the phases we went through, and to some degree as a leader, the phases I went through. And I don't know if this will resonate with the audience, but I remember very clearly the last time as a company we got together physically was at our own yearly kickoff. And I look back on that with a lot of fondness, and a lot of relief that we were able to do that, because it sort of set the vision and the stage for the vision, for the strategy that I outlined. And we've been lucky that we've been able to execute. But even at that moment, it was sort of brewing. And I think that this phase that we were in was a little bit of denial, like in many parts of certainly in the US. Well, it's somewhere else. It's not going to be that serious. And quickly we went to this second phase, which I really call the safety phase. My only thought at that moment was, looking at the data that we saw, is how do we get our employees feeling safe and trusted? That they have a company that's going to have their back and they have something to rely on. And that phase was driven, I think, First, by getting everyone to work from home. We made the decision quite early, globally, that everyone would work from home. We went through the same challenges about how we're going to support our customers. You know, we have a professional services group that are typically on site. But what sort of came from that was this moment, which I'm going to call the adrenaline phase, which was that it quickly translated once everyone was safe is how are we going to do the same for every one of our customers? Because after all, the classic play in customer engagement is large scale call centers, everyone in the same building, you know, privacy is paramount. You can't work from home. You know, we provide solutions to some of the largest financial institutions in the world. And suddenly everything was turned upside down. But in that moment of adrenaline, I felt that we saw customers come together and the company come together in a way that I didn't expect. You know, it's that classic, sometimes it takes a crisis to really, really bring the values together. And it manifested in us creating solutions, free solutions for our customers, and said, look, if you need help, we can get you up and running within 72 hours. And one of the best examples is we did this for the city of Helsinki. Helsinki, they needed to communicate about what was going on, and they didn't have a system in place. And we span up a cloud-based system in basically a few hours for hundreds of agents to get online and get communicating. And so that adrenaline, I think, turned into this bigger purpose, this bigger mission that, you know, it's actually beyond safety and business continuities that actually we're about to transform the way that people use this. And the last phase, and this is the hardest phase, has really been this new normal. And, you know, I'm sure many of you have thought about, well, you know, wow, we thought productivity would go down, but it seems to have gone up. You know, we thought that people wouldn't be able to work in this way, but somehow we are. But what I would put to you, and the thing that I wrestle with the most, has been at what cost? So on the one hand, it's true that we haven't really missed a beat on our results. We've been beneficiaries. We had some tailwinds because of COVID, because of the type of things that we offer. But let's face it, it's not the grand experiment that you would do for work from home. You wouldn't just say to 5,000 employees, you know what, we're going to try this. So everyone work from home, because we're productive, because in many ways there's nowhere to go. There's not the kind of social interaction. And so what I'm in the phase of now is really trying to balance that. And one way is first make sure that we give our employees space. We did two key things this year. One is we created what we call August free days. So every Friday in August was time off, just to recoup, recalibrate, you know, get out of that adrenaline of just driving customer strategy execution. And then at the end of the year, we gave the whole company time off as well. Now, I don't think that is the same as that interaction you can get by being in office or being a customer, but it was a way of recognizing the challenge. I'd leave you with one thought, not to drain this for too long though. I do think we are going to be in a new world of hybrid working, but when I think about the culture bank of a company, the things that really bind you together, that adrenaline that we've been running on is sort of been taken away from that culture bank. And so what I think about in the next phase, in the new normal, is how do I replenish that culture bank, not in the way we did it before, but capturing the magic of what made that culture bank the culture it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We'll have to stay tuned and see how that goes for you, because I think we're all dealing with the same thing. And I love your concept of you've got to have your people feel safe and excited about the business, or otherwise they can't, you know, serve the customer, the outside customer, like you want them to. So really interesting. And I think we're all wrestling, what does the new normal look like? What does coming back to work look like? And this thing is morphing so quickly, and who knows what it'll look like 6 months from now, but really interesting comments. So I've got the chat line is open here, and there's a silly question, but it's getting a lot of interest, so I'm going to ask it. When Genesys acquired Interactive Intelligence, did they keep the rock wall at headquarters? And if so, have you scaled the wall?
Well, I might have to come back to you on that. I'm not sure. I certainly, no one put me through the rock wall. So let me find out. And if it is there, I guarantee you next time I'm there, I'll try and scale it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. So getting into a couple of other subjects, what protocols does your company take when protecting clients' data? I know that's a big question, but can you generalize?
Yeah, it's actually a great question. It's paramount. It's what we do. Not only do we take it very seriously, we comply with all the regulatory environments around the world. And by the way, for folks who run global companies, this is a very rapidly changing landscape. If you think about GDPR that started in Europe and how that's sort of become the de facto standard, for those who follow it, there was a recent court ruling in the European Union, which is called the Schrems 2 case, which even talks about not just that, you need to secure end customer data, but you also can't move it to different places around the world. And so it fundamentally changes the way you think about operating your business. It's absolutely paramount. So when I'm talking about using data, it's not using individuals, specific data. It's about, training models around that data. So it's abstracting, anonymizing that data. One of the things I'm super proud about that happened last year for our Genesys Cloud product, the product I talked about earlier, we were the first in the world to ever be certified for what's called the ISO, it's an esoteric term, but the ISO 27018 standard, which is really the most premier cloud-based standard for privacy and security. But what I would tell you is that I think this is a work in progress. It's really important for companies that are playing in this space to really, have the expertise, have folks that are tracking this on a daily basis. I'm on the board of a couple of other public companies, and one in particular is eBay. And if you just think about just internet sales tax as a different example of the changing regulatory environment, and that can dramatically change your business, it's really important that you stay on top of it. It's something that we take seriously. You don't get to, have the privilege of working with some of the largest financial companies on the planet, insurance companies, without really putting at the forefront. I think it's one of the things that's really powerful in the history of Genesys. All that learning, is super important that it gets applied as we go forward. At the end of the day, what we do is we drive a lot of mission critical services, right? We have to be up when someone wants to talk to someone. We have to be secure when someone wants to transact. We have to, take the privacy of an individual incredibly seriously. So it's really at the foundation of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. So there is an image of the tech industry that it's a bit of a tech bros club, and for many years maybe not as inclusive as a lot of other industries. What has worked for you when recruiting and retaining women and people of color?
Yeah, I think it's a very important topic. And we, as a company, are very focused on really diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would say, at the highest level. You can see it manifested in my leadership team. We are focused really in two key areas. We actually, and we probably should have done it sooner, but I'm very proud that we have done it, is we have a formal DE&I office. Mm-hmm. And that is an office that is about making sure that we're focused on training. So, unconscious bias, it's a real thing. And so we put a lot of focus on that, making sure that we're arming the company with data so they know where they are in the journey, and setting targets. So that's first and foremost. Second is really creating this notion of allies within the organization, right? So that groups that may have felt like they were underrepresented now have a voice, a seat at the table. And I would say the other piece that is really critical is that we are a global company. Some people will say to me, where are you based? And it's very tempting to say, oh, Daly City, because that's where the headquarters is incorporated. But I don't say that. I say that we're based all over the world. And I think that the essence of diversity and inclusion is really recognizing that the power of the collective of our company comes from the uniqueness of the global diversity that we have. And it manifests in the way that we think about the team. I mean, just to give you a perspective for everyone, my leadership team is not based in Silicon Valley. My leadership team is distributed all over the US and all over the world. And it does have some challenges, right? There's classical time zone challenges. You don't have so much of the sort of water cooler effect that you can get. But I would put it to everyone that challenge is far outweighed by the diversity of views and different ways of seeing the world that we all need to, I think, especially right now, really take on board. And the notion of sort of HQ centricity is really changing. And I think you do see that happening in many, many companies. But I would just say that at the root of diversity is recognizing and respecting other people's opinions and taking them seriously. And so it's a strong initiative in the company. And the second part around this is also sustainability. We launched for the first time, and this is always quite challenging companies, our first external sustainability report. And we just hired a tremendous leader as our global sustainability officer, because it's not just about what you do with your employee base, it's what you give back to the community. And it's how you think about the evolution of your technology. And so to me, these are two paramount underpinnings of the culture of Genesys and where we move forward.
It's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. What's around the corner in tech?
Yeah, look, I think it's a super exciting time in technology. And I think that I really, as I touched on, the technology now is reaching a place where, while we can't, and emulate empathy in the fullest sense, I think we have all the data points to start really delivering better experiences. And I think that this is paramount for a couple of reasons. Number one is, the one thing that technology has done in many ways, it's kind of democratized a lot of the things that used to be competitive advantages, right? Like when I grew up at Cisco, we built a lot of infrastructure. And, a company would have to build their own data centers, rack and stack, all their equipment, their networking. And the cloud took that away. That made it a lot easier. The barrier to entry went down. You used to have to spend a lot of money on your brand and marketing. Social kind of took that away. Now, all of us can basically launch a campaign and say, I want to target these folks. Two developers can build an innovative app at almost no money today and disrupt whole industries, and we know about it. So as a company, the thing that really matters, I think, going forward is, how do you show up for your customer? How do you make your customer feel really special? So some of those, outspend someone on R&D or advertising or whatever, those have been neutralized. And at the end of the day, we all want to feel special. We all want to feel heard. When I joined the company, I talked to many, many customers, and I try to understand from their perspective those magical moments when they really nailed it with their customers. And it was always one of those agents, for example, who took the time, sometimes broke the rules, in some way, to go the extra mile, sort of became the hero. And I think that we can do that with technology, because it's reached a place where we are all becoming data companies. Machine learning is really getting to that next level where you can't fully predict, but you can start to predict a lot of those things. So I'm excited about that. I think that what's interesting about our industry, because of its mission critical nature, it's one of the last bastions to really have been disrupted. So that's a big opportunity for Genesys. But I think it's one of the most important ones. At the end of the day, I know we've all had sometimes bad customer experiences, right? But there's really no reason why that should be the case going forward. So I'm super excited about that. I think we're also, reaching an interesting moment where we will start to see new modalities of interaction. You mentioned it, like when I was running Skype 10 years ago, it was sort of very kind of advanced, leading edge to be interacting in this way. And we've already now taken that for granted. We're already much more comfortable on video. So I think that one thing we're also going to see is the continued way of using technology to express ourselves. And I think they'll play hand in hand. Like, just take the interaction we're having is, you can read my body language. We can sort of, we have a sense of the engagement. Imagine if we can take that on the next level. So as you go into a customer engagement, I already know your sentiment, your feelings, maybe you're not having a good day. So I better not try and upsell you to a new broadband package.
Better know that, yeah.
But how many times does that happen to all of us, right? Because they're following a script and it's not really taking advantage of it. So I think new modalities will help blur that together. Some of that already exists. There's sentiment analysis, there's engines that are coming. And when we combine these things together, I think, there's a lot of possibilities out there.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, this time has gone way too fast. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah. Before we begin the conversation, after the conversation, we want to remind you all that today's presentation will be available online at economicclubofindiana.com. And please join us next month, Thursday, February 11th, to hear from the NBA Commissioner, Adam Silver. Be sure to register for this virtual event on our website, and information for each season's presenters can be found at economicclubofindiana.com. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Rebekah Hutton of Leadership Indianapolis to begin the conversation after the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I am thrilled to be here again this month. What a great conversation with Tony and Kathy. As she mentioned, I am Rebekah Hutton, President and CEO of Leadership Indianapolis. And I'm very excited to have two local leaders with us today. We have Jim McDonald, who is Managing Director and Market Manager at JP Morgan Private Bank, and Latoya Johnson, who is the founder of Away Zones. So I don't know about everyone else, but for me, one of the things that I miss about in-person live events, and especially the Economic Club, is I always enjoy the program, but I always really, really love the kind of chit-chat conversations that happen afterwards as I'm walking to the car or walking back to the office. And so we hope you'll stick around with us for a few minutes, because that's what this conversation is, a very casual conversation to just think about what were some of the things that we heard and learned and are really going to be taking away with us after hearing from Tony. And before we jump in with Latoya and Jim, one of the things that stood out to me that I've had conversations with both of you about is, as Tony was talking, I really kept hearing this theme of the success of the company and the sector really depends on thinking both about your employees and thinking about your customers, right? And that if you neglect one or the other, you're going to have problems. And he didn't say it in those exact words, but as he was talking about when the pandemic first hit, that it was important to make sure that his employees first felt safe and trusted, and then they thought about how they extended that to their customers. And when he showed the image of the kind of the vision, at the center of it was empathy, loyalty, and trust. And I think a lot of times when we're thinking about business, particularly large business or tech, it gets to be very kind of mechanical or profit or, nuts and bolts. But it really struck me that at the heart of what he was talking about were the ideas of empathy, loyalty, and trust. And so, Latoya, I want to just throw it to you first, because with Away Zones, I mean, that, again, these are my words, not yours, but I think that's very much at the heart of what you're trying to create for the community. So can you tell us a little bit about Away Zones and what connections you made with Tony's presentation?
Yes, 100%. Thanks for the opportunity. So, Away Zones is the company, and we are developing a product that we have called Victor. It is a mobile application that helps authentic minority-owned businesses get in front of the people who are looking for them. And so we're basically providing that conduit between businesses and consumers, particularly those of underrepresented, disenfranchised communities, to connect with one another, and spend money and sort of build their ecosystem up so that they have stronger economic empowerment within those communities. And so while listening, a lot sort of stood out to me in terms of the personalization and really giving almost a customized customer experience, right? And he made the point later about everyone just kind of wants to be heard. And that is true from your top CEOs of your Fortune 500 to your smaller mom and pops on, the corner of everywhere street, right? And so being able to have the technology that makes people feel cared for and unique. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, right? Like technology that makes people feel important and unique, and even, having some level of empathy. It sounds, contrary, but it's obviously what seems to be the natural next step in this evolution of technology, and where everyone who works in this space should be focusing, because you have to take care of your immediate customer and also their customer if you want to have a successful business model.
Yeah, well said. Jim, you are over at JP Morgan, which is another very large company, but I also hear you talking about some of these same ideas of really providing a valuable experience to customers. And I know, as Tony was talking about some of the efforts that they have around diversity, equity, and inclusion, I know that you've done a lot of work as well with affinity groups within your company. So I'm really curious. I was making a lot of connections to your work as I was listening to Tony. I'm curious as to what were some of those big takeaways that you had.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for having me. And I think an observation I've had over the past few years is that financial service companies, banks, and other types of firms like that actually have a lot in common with tech companies. One, sometimes you'll hear us say we sort of are a tech company because the huge amount of like we all really bank on our phone as much as we bank in person. But I also think a lot of those challenges are there, and a lot of our experiences were similar. So I took a bunch of notes, and there were several things that jumped out at me. One was this idea that we thought, oh, we're going to be at home and not be productive. And actually, now many people in the bank were working in person. We had that element too. If you went into a branch, we never shut down, and we had tons of frontline workers who showed up every day. And continue to do so in the height of the pandemic. But we also have a lot of people like myself that have been working from home, yet we've been able to be very productive. And then that brought to the next point that he raised, which was this idea of kind of employee engagement, morale, burnout. And we did something similar where I chose to have my team take Fridays off in the summer. And we recognized most people weren't doing big vacations. Yet how do you not have them work so hard that they completely burn out? And I think we've done okay, but I think one, it's really hard, and two, it's kind of tricky. I don't have a great answer for that. Financial services historically has had the same challenges that tech. I mean, I don't know that we've had quite the bro culture, although I think the Wall Street element of financial services had that, that sort of wrap 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think all of the challenges that he's tried to address are things that we've tried to address. And we've had a great partnership with Leadership Indianapolis, and trying to do a better job on our diversity and inclusion efforts. And we've got, very robust business resource and employee resource groups. And but there's still so much work. As much progress as we've made, we still have a ton of work to do. We're nowhere near where we need to be. And I think the whole community and many of the leaders that are in this conversation watching us now realize and recognize that same challenge. So it is heartening to see the amount of effort that's going in there.
And then finally, I might highlight his comment about the return to the new normal. That's, Rebekah, that's something you and I have talked about, this idea that maybe we're not getting back to the old normal, that even as we get vaccinated and things get better, there are probably some permanent changes to how we engage, what coming to work looks like. I don't know that any of us have the answer, but I am definitely in the camp that we're not going back to the old normal, we're going to a new normal. And I know that's something many leaders in our community are very much grappling with. And I was also resonated with his idea of how do we have great employee connectivity? How do we sort of get with, where we may not be together all the time. Hopefully we will all be together a little bit more than we have been, but we may never possibly go back to the way it was. And how do we still have those informal interactions and those bonds? And that's something that I know at our bank we think about quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that point about productivity, because I wrote that down and put like a giant star next to it in my notes, which and it's something I've thought a lot about, right? Which is productivity has unexpectedly gone up in a lot of spaces. But the next thing that he said I thought was what was really key, which is at what cost, right? At what cost? And in the same way that, he was thinking about like empathy and loyalty and those pieces as being central too, not just profits and some of those nuts and bolts. It's not enough for us to just think like, oh, we're more productive, we've increased efficiency during this time, without also thinking about at what cost. And I know for myself, I'd like to think I'm still getting a lot done working from home, but I'm also trying to be a little bit more intentional about, finding 20 minutes in the afternoon to take a walk when the sun is out, or actually stopping and making dinner, because I think it can, that drive to be productive, particularly at a time when there are so many unknowns, can almost push us too hard. And so I'm curious, your thoughts about that and how you're managing the cost. I mean, and Latoya, especially as an entrepreneur who is really building up your app and your business, I think there's even more pressure on entrepreneurs and small shops on the regular to kind of always be so productive and always push so hard. So how are the two of you managing kind of that balance between being productive and helping the people around you be productive, but also paying attention to the cost? And the other thing I'll add, and then I'll shut up and let you guys talk, is a piece of that. I read an article recently that's really stood out to me and stayed with me, in which it talked about, as managers, it's not enough for us just to tell folks to take time off. We have to actually lighten their workload. Otherwise, what we're telling them is they have less time to still get the same amount of work done. And so I think for me, that's another piece that I've really been thinking a lot about this.
Well, Rebekah, I know for me, trying to stay productive while so much is happening in the world. It has been a challenge, right? It's been challenging for everyone, but it's important to prioritize my physical and mental health, which is something very deliberate, right? Like I have to write it down. I have to add it to my schedule just as I would any other meeting that I have throughout the day. And then, over the summer I had interns, and I was very deliberate about not giving them too much work and burning them out, because I am aware of what COVID-19 has done to the community. I am aware of the civil and social unrest that we're going through right now, this awakening that's sort of happening. So there's so many external factors that I didn't want to overwhelm them with work obligations, because I didn't want to risk the quality. So I would rather give one or two small assignments, maybe not small for me, but they may be small for someone else, but one or two assignments that I know can be done with high quality, and they can focus on that while they focus on everything else. And the same goes for me as well, right? So what's the top priority for the organization? Of course, there are 5 or 10 different top priorities, but really which one is going to take me to the next step and handle it one at a time, because it has to be done with quality. And the only way that I can accomplish that is if I am a good place physically and mentally. So making it a priority.
Yeah, what about you, Jim? I mean, how are you in your sphere managing that balance of productivity, but also thinking about at what cost?
Well, like I said, it's I don't know that there's a perfect answer. I think that is a challenge in this environment. I think I would echo everything that Latoya said, and maybe just would add, I think it's important that you lead by example if you're in a position of leadership. So you can't tell people you have to take the Friday off and then you're working and bombarding them with texts and emails if that's the day off. You've got to kind of honor some boundaries there, even in the work from home where it's a lot easier to do so. And I think for your own family as well, you know, it's super easy to just say, well, I'm going to sit at my computer for 2 hours and do work. And sometimes you have to, but I think you need to honor that with family and friends as well. I think the concept Latoya brought up of scheduling is important, and because I think it's also easy to fall into a trap, say, well, I'm at home, so I'll just sort of squeeze this in. And I think if you don't put that on your Outlook calendar or whatever tool you're using and sort of block that in, it probably won't happen. And also it allows you to protect that time from other people that are going to try to encroach in. I had something I had to take care of last Friday, and I put that on my calendar at 3 o'clock, and I was able to get it done, and I wasn't interrupted during that. And I think sometimes you just have to you have to do that. But those are simple things. I don't know that there's an easy answer. I think there are definitely some challenges to this work from home environment, and I think that's one of them for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for staying with us for a little bit and sharing some of the insights that you gleaned from Tony's remarks. And I hope everybody else also had some big takeaways that they'll be willing to share. Make sure you just share them on social media and use the hashtag for Econ Club, or tag Leadership Indianapolis and Econ Club. We'd love to know what everybody else is taking away from Tony's very thoughtful remarks. And we hope to see you next month for the February lunch. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.